I'm Sienna. I'm the kid.
I'm Sarah. I'm the mom.
This is Queer Kid Straight Mom.
Let's talk. Welcome back to Queer Kids Straight Mom. Today we're talking about the so-called wave of violence being committed by transgender people.
Spoiler alert, if you don't want to listen to the entire episode, here's not a transgender murder wave. It's not a thing. Stop. The end.
Right. That's the short version. If it is difficult for you to listen to this and some of the very mean things that people have to say.
And if you don't want to listen to all the mean things people say, but you still want resources so that when people say mean things to you, you can be like, actually, no, they'll be up on our social media and website.
This is on my mind because a couple of weeks ago, a transgender woman shot and killed her parents in southern Utah. I follow a lot of Utah news sites. And so
She follows more Utah news sites than I do. And I actually live in Utah for most of the year.
Yeah. So I unfortunately had to see all of the comments that people had about this. And it turns out that there are a lot of people who think that this is a really big problem. Transgender shootings.
Because when you don't want to acknowledge that like gun violence is a problem, you pin it on marginalized groups. It's very convenient for people who want to complain about how many people are dying without acknowledging that they are the problem when they with their NRA bumper stickers.
True. Sadly, what horrified people most about this crime was not the tragic death of two people, but the fact that the newspapers referred to this transgender woman as she. The majority of comments went something along the lines of, lies, you lie, you've gone woke, these are lies, because they interpreted this as untrue reporting, irresponsible journalism, even dangerous because, according to a lot of these people, when the suspect was still at large, describing her as a woman when to them, in their minds, she was a man, meant people would be looking for the wrong person.
Which is very confusing because I don't know about y'all, but like cis men and trans women tend to look very different. And if you told me I was looking for a cisgender man, I would not look at transgender women.
Well, and regardless, every article I saw within the text of the article said that she was transitioning or had been transitioning, and most of them even had pictures from before. So if people had gotten past the headline, they actually would have had all the information. Anyway, all of this information didn't stop people from freaking out. And then this, of course, moved into the conversation about the alleged trans crime wave. I attempted to give some good information and perspective to these people, but in the end, they thought the same things, and I had been called a lot of names. So that didn't really work.
But I've been called zero names because I don't hang out on Twitter.
Anyway, it was really troubling to me to see how prevalent this narrative has become. You find out that once you peel back the surface just a little bit into certain circles, this is a big topic of conversation. And there are people really stirring this up into a thing. So it was important to me today to discuss some of the facts. So if anybody who believes this is a problem happens to listen to this podcast, maybe this will help. In the more likely case that the people listening to this podcast could just use some facts to share when they see this kind of thing, here it is. There's a lot of information from last spring because a shooter who identified as transgender shot and killed multiple people at a Nashville private school, causing a lot of conversation about whether it was because that person was transgender. So from last March, there was a Washington Post article fact-checking this claim. And they stated that according to the Gun Violence Project, since 2018, there have been 2,697 mass shootings, which they define as 4 or more shot or killed in a shooting incident, as trans people make up 0.6% of the population. one would expect at least 16 mass shootings to be conducted by trans people if you're, applying that statistical representation to the population.
Is helpful.
However, at the time of the article, there had been just 3 possible cases. Therefore, trans people are not only not committing more mass shootings than the general population, they are actually at a rate lower than their percentage of the population. So any suggestion that there is a wave of trans shootings is unfounded based on those statistics. According to gender and criminology experts, mass casualty shootings perpetrated by someone identifying as trans are rare. The overwhelming majority of mass shooters are cisgender men.
I'm tempted to say something snarky, but that would be very bioessentialist of me, so I'm not going to. But, I don't think anyone's really that surprised by that.
According to Laura Dugan, professor of human security and sociology at Ohio State, the examples of trans mass shootings out of the overall number of mass shootings translates to 0.11% being perpetrated by someone who is not cisgender. And she says, we cannot statistically make any claim of a trend. James Allen Fox, statistician and professor of criminology, law, and public policy at Northeastern University, who helps maintain the AP USA Today Northeastern database of mass killings in the US, says, quote, there are a lot of mass shootings, hundreds of mass shootings, and to cherry pick 4 of them and say, here's a trend, that's wrong. You can't make a conclusion that that's significant. It is not significant in any statistical sense. He adds, this is capitalizing on tragedy for political purposes. Olivera Jokic, director of gender studies at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, says, the political rhetoric using statistical information about gender identification of mass shooters is wrong and seems to serve to distract from existing discussions about mass shootings as a public health problem. As you said earlier, we're acknowledging that people are getting killed, but we don't really want to talk about guns being a problem. That makes a really handy topic. A June article written by Henry Friedella, professor in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and affiliate professor in the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University, and Alexis Rowland, PhD student in criminology, law, and society, University of California, Irvine, has a lot of really good information. They say, quote, but as criminologists, we know these claims are without merit. No reliable data supports the argument that transgender people commit violent crimes at higher rates than cisgender men and women. We believe the spate of anti-trans proposals represents a textbook example of crime control theater, an unnecessary, ineffective, and harmful legislative response to unfounded fear-mongering. Which sort of tracks with what we suspected.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked.
We know there's really no link between trans people and violent crime. Why do people even think that gender identity would make people commit crimes? The first reason they use is apparently a lot of people sincerely believe that transgender people are delusional and become violent when the reasonable people around them present them with reality.
Can confirm this isn't true. I just spent an entire 5 days surrounded by people who would not use my pronouns and kept referring to me as sister, girl, blah, blah, blah. And there was no violence. It was actually a lovely weekend other than that. Everyone's happy. It's whatever. I mean, I didn't like it, but there was no violence.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that for a vast number of people that don't bother to understand the science behind gender identity, it is just a delusion. And they think that there are these innocent people that are trying to help by waking them up from their delusion and that they're getting killed for it.
I mean, what we also have to think about here, though, is that that's a textbook case of demonization of mental illness as well, because it basically says that anyone with any kind of mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, that kind of thing, that perhaps may manifest itself in detachment from other people's perception of reality is automatically an evil, violent person. And of course, that links into all sorts of tropes that have been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, which isn't true. I mean, there are people who do experience detachment from reality who are also not violent. This is hateful on multiple levels.
Violent people are violent. Yeah. Non-violent people are non-violent. One of the saddest things that I saw in these conversations is people using the statistics about higher suicide rates among LGBTQ plus people, not as evidence that they should treat them more kindly or be more inclusive, but as evidence that trans people are mentally ill, which is, to me, a shocking case of taking information that was supposed to convince them to stop being mean and using it as an excuse to be mean.
Right. Especially given that evidence shows, right, as soon as parents accept their children, whether that's their sexual orientation or their gender identity, as soon as they're respected in their social circles, as soon as they have one trustworthy adult in their life, recent research showing that gender affirming healthcare makes a substantial difference in people's quality of life. Like, evidence clearly shows that that high rate of suicide is impacted and goes down as soon as you treat people with decent human respect. And yet what they got is you're crazy and you just want to kill yourself and take everyone else out with you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, exactly what you said. Like, I can actually give you some numbers on that. According to an article in Lancet from June 2023, gender affirming care is linked to an improved quality of life and mental health among trans people. Results from a prospective cohort study of U.S. trans youths showed increases in positive psychological outcomes, including positive affect and life satisfaction, and decreases in depression and anxiety symptoms after receiving 2 years of hormones. Notably, the study also reported a total of 3.5% suicidal ideation, a comparable rate to the U.S. general population rate of 4.6%. To date, no studies have reported findings that suggest gender-affirming care increases negative mental health outcomes. So, yeah.
It's like there's a very, very simple, so many simple ways of helping trans youth and, allowing these kids to really, really thrive and be happy and not be depressed and suicidal. And yet people would rather ban their health care, try to ban them using their pronouns and chosen names and all of that. And then, throw a tantrum about it. It's really sad. It's ridiculous and upsetting. And I'm using the words my debate coach would tell me not to use, but it's very emotionally charged for me. And it's hard to articulate it in a way that is not emotionally charged.
And I think it's just part of this larger trend of like ignoring data, hard scientific information, because it doesn't, like, people would rather say that medicine has gone woke than actually believe the medical experts, which I think would be different if they broke their leg and needed a doctor, but maybe not. I don't know. There also is the argument that hormone treatments are making people violent. After the Nashville shooting, a lot of people suggested the shooter committed the crime because of increased aggression from testosterone treatment. Marjorie Taylor Greene was particularly vocal about this, which probably tells you all you need to know, but I'll continue. A review of testosterone therapy and aggression in trans men from the journal Hormones and Behavior found an increase in anger at only 3 to 7 months, that 1 out of 3 studies reported a decrease in hostility, that there were no changes in aggression-related constructs beyond a 1-year follow-up, and there was a moderate to high risk of bias in the few studies on the subject. So there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's an article in the British Medical Journal, Open, that said aggression scores will increase during initiation of testosterone treatment, but the aggression scores will return to baseline during long-term testosterone treatment, which pretty much tracks with the other information that we do have to this point. Laura Dugan, the professor that I quoted earlier, says, given how few women commit mass murder, it is even more rare for a woman planning to transition to be a man to commit mass murder. This might be the first regarding the Nashville situation. Keep in mind that thousands of transgender males take testosterone and do not mass murder anyone.
Also, this is just such a bad argument because, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to ban men? Like, are we going to ban testosterone-related puberty? No. Like, it's a natural hormone, and in some cases, it might be correlated with increased aggression. There are also plenty of cisgender men who do not mass murder anyone.
Yeah.
It's a bad argument.
Bad argument. And as for transgender women, because, there's also that, oh, they're pumping themselves full of estrogen trying to be women. Of course, they're, going crazy or whatever, which, first of all, I take offense with because women aren't inherently crazy. But yes, we know there are some emotional changes when you start estrogen, but these generally resolve.
Again, like puberty. It's the same thing that happens to every single teenager on the face of the planet when they go through puberty. It's normal. It's natural. It happens.
And again, as with mental health, hormones as part of gender affirming care are generally helpful, not harmful.
And also, they're used in plenty of other contexts, right? They're used in birth control. They're used in menopause treatment. No one is out there saying that birth control is making people murder people.
Or there might be.
I mean, I guess there could be. It's not a mainstream argument that I've heard. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to start a trend here, right? But these are widely accepted medical treatments.
Right.
By and large, the people who say that, hormone treatment is making trans people crazy are not saying the same thing when it comes to cisgender women or cisgender men.
Mm-hmm. According to a Stanford University School of Medicine, trans people who began hormone treatment in adolescence had fewer thoughts of suicide, were less likely to experience major mental health disorders, and had fewer problems with substance abuse than those who started hormones in adulthood. The study also documented better mental health among those who received hormones at any age than those who desired but never received treatments. Again, positive results.
Yeah, it's like people have been saying for years, oh, well, there's no longitudinal data on this. Like, we don't know what the impacts are. And as it turns out, as soon as we start getting the data back, it confirms exactly what trans people have been saying for 100 years.
Yep. That same Lancet article cites a large match control study showing that use of hormones was associated with less depression, and trans people not on hormones had a 4-fold increased risk of depressive disorder. So if you're worried about the mental health of transgender people, let them take the hormones.
Mind blown.
The only significant statistical link between transgender people and violent crime, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is that transgender people are far, far more likely to be victims of violent crimes than cisgender people. So there you go. If there is a crime wave, it is not by transgender people. It is towards transgender. Got anything to add?
Nope, that's about it.
So it's sad that we need to have this conversation, but here we are. Every time a transgender person commits a crime, this discussion is going to pop up. And I know it is a fine line, like I have found. Giving people correct information tends to make them angrier.
It's like, in a video game when there are certain enemies that like you shoot them or like whatever, you hit them with your lightsaber and then it like triggers them and they like get 6 more weapons and start racing towards you and like exploding and stuff. It's like that. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, a little bit. But I feel all we can do is get that information out there as much as we possibly can. I could probably be better at not engaging. Just post studies, post whatever. And the hopeless feeling that I get sometimes is that because there's also this narrative that all scientists and doctors and journalists are woke and enemies of the truth, that this information is meaningless to them. But I don't know.
The solution is to move to Mars. Who's with me?
So we can do that. My hope is that I know the person that I'm giving the information to might not, probably not, will not be swayed by it, but that, people reading the comments that might not comment or react in any way will see it and think, oh, that person kind of scared me, but it sounds like maybe there's not actually a transgender crime.
Well, and I'll see it and be like, wow, this one lady is like posting all of these reasonable, well-researched claims and like linking to actual studies. And then this other dude is like calling her names and attacking her. And that doesn't look very good.
This is what we're dealing with. So we keep fighting the good fight, and we're here to help in whatever ways we can, and to remind you that no matter what the cruel people who were threatened by information say, there are also a lot of people like us that know that you are good people whose lives are worthwhile and you are cared about by a lot of people. So please don't ever forget that.
In apparently what is becoming a series of bopping transphobes on the head with facts.
Next time, we'll be discussing the trope that the transgender movement, the groomers, I guess, is what they consider them, are preying on autistic people.
This trope has been pushed by such notable figures as our beloved J.K. Rowling. So, it has a pretty substantial platform.
Oh, what was that line at the end of The Devil Wears Prada? It was like, of all the people that have worked for me, she disappointed me the most. Like, that just popped into my head. J.K. Rowling, of all the writers in the world, you have disappointed me the most. With that, keep your chins up. I know it is hard right now, but there are people that care. Don't ever forget all the resources that are out there, should you need them. And we will catch you next time.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, interesting, or just mildly amusing, please consider rating and reviewing us on your podcasting platform of choice. It really helps us to get the word out there and spread this information as far as we can.
And as always, check out our website at queerkidsstraightmom.com or visit us on Facebook, Queer Kid Straight Mom, Instagram at queerkid.straightmom, or Twitter at queerkidstr, the number 8 mom.
And if you're feeling especially generous, please consider joining our Patreon by searching Queer Kids Straight Mom. It helps us fund this podcast.